Every day, millions of people make the same mistake. They forget about safety. One wrong move, one moment of distraction, and work turns into tragedy. On this channel, we show how a single mistake changes everything. Enjoy watching. A tragic accident unfolds in a warehouse as a group of workers moves a tall, unstable stack of large glass panes on a cart. With a fatal error in judgment, one of the workers positions himself in a narrow space between the moving load and a stationary fence. The unsecured stack of glass suddenly topples over, falling and violently crushing him against the fence. The chaotic scene that follows, with other workers rushing to help, highlights the sheer, unforgiving force of a heavy load in motion. This horrific incident serves as a critical lesson on the immense danger of working in a crush zone, a high-risk area where a person can be pinned between a moving object and a stationary one. It underscores the absolute necessity of securing unstable loads with proper straps or specialized frames to prevent them from toppling. Furthermore, the tragedy emphasizes the importance of a well-planned path and ensuring all personnel are aware of the dangers and remain clear of the moving load trajectory. A tragic event unfolds in a factory as a worker is crushed by a mechanical arm while operating a machine. In a desperate attempt to help their trapped colleague, two other workers rush to the scene. What they don't realize is that the machine is still running, and their impulsive action is about to lead to an even greater tragedy. The still-running conveyor belt then catches their clothing and bodies as well, pulling them into the mechanism. This horrific chain of events serves as a critical lesson on two distinct safety failures. It highlights the extreme danger of working in close proximity to moving machinery parts like a mechanical arm. More importantly, it underscores the absolute necessity of immediately de-energizing a machine using a lockout/tagout (LOTO) procedure during an accident, as the failure to hit the emergency stop button turned a single, catastrophic event into a devastating tragedy for multiple workers. A tragic event unfolds in a factory when an uncoordinated swap of operators at a control panel leads to disaster. A forklift driver, unaware that a different person is now at the machine, comes to an abrupt stop. His simple action sets off a horrific chain of events. The unsecured load on the forks loses balance, tips over, and collapses onto the unsuspecting worker, pinning him against the equipment. This horrific chain of events serves as a critical lesson on two distinct safety failures. First, it highlights the extreme danger of a lack of coordination and communication between mobile equipment drivers and stationary workers. More importantly, it underscores the absolute necessity of strictly following safety protocols for transporting loads, as it was the failure to properly secure the stack of plywood that turned a routine work action into a tragedy with fatal consequences. During a street excavation, workers stand dangerously close as an excavator digs. Suddenly, it strikes a pressurized pipeline, causing a violent eruption that knocks one worker down and sends the others scrambling for safety as the area floods. This incident reveals two critical safety failures. The first was the failure to locate and mark underground utilities before digging. The second was the lack of a safe standoff distance for personnel, placing workers directly in harm's way and turning an equipment failure into a life-threatening event. A workplace catastrophe occurs as a forklift's heavy and unstable load begins to fall. In a split second of panic, the operator makes a desperate attempt to exit the cabin and save the cargo. Tragically, he stumbles and falls directly into the path of the moving vehicle. The now uncontrolled forklift then rolls over the fallen worker, crushing him beneath its immense weight. This incident reveals two fatal failures in procedure and training. The first was the initial loss of load control, which points to the cargo being improperly secured or balanced before the lift. More critically, the operator's instinct to leave the protective cabin to try and catch a falling load represents a tragic, yet common, lapse in judgment. This decision turned a potential material loss into a devastating human cost by placing himself directly in the path of the heavy machine. At a chaotic industrial site, a large dump truck begins to reverse. A woman walking behind the vehicle, seemingly unaware of its movement, steps directly into its large blind spot. The truck strikes the pedestrian and runs her over with its rear wheels as other people notice and rush towards the scene in horror. This tragic incident reveals two fundamental safety failures. The first was the pedestrian's critical lack of situational awareness in an active zone with heavy machinery. More importantly, it highlights a total failure in site management, with no traffic control plan to separate people from moving vehicles, allowing them to wander into lethal blind spots. In a workshop, a man operates a machine with exposed rotating parts while wearing dangerously loose clothing. Suddenly, a sleeve of his shirt is caught by the machine's rollers. Before he can react, he is violently pulled off his feet and dragged into the powerful mechanism, becoming horrifically entangled. This event highlights two critical safety violations. The first is the complete failure to guard the machine's moving components, which left a lethal entanglement hazard exposed. Secondly, the workers' loose-fitting clothes were a significant personal risk factor, demonstrating the absolute necessity of appropriate attire when working near rotating equipment. At a highway construction site, workers operate inside a formwork structure located perilously close to live traffic. Suddenly, an out-of-control SUV veers off the road at high speed, goes airborne, and crashes violently into the work zone, landing upside down just inches from the crew, who scramble for their lives. This terrifying incident reveals two severe safety failures. The primary failure is the complete lack of positive protection, such as concrete barriers, to shield the work zone from the adjacent highway. Furthermore, the flimsy temporary fencing created a false sense of security, highlighting a critical failure to properly isolate workers from the foreseeable hazard of errant vehicles. In a busy auto workshop, a car improperly positioned on a two-post lift begins to fall. In a desperate and fatal misjudgment, a nearby mechanic rushes forward and attempts to physically stop the multi-ton vehicle from falling. The car crashes to the ground, pinning the worker beneath it as his horrified colleagues rush to help. This catastrophic incident reveals two profound safety failures. The primary error was failing to properly set the vehicle on the lift's center of gravity, which caused the initial instability. More critically, the mechanic's instinctual but irrational decision to try and catch a falling car represents a complete failure of safety training, turning a costly equipment failure into a devastating human tragedy.